and get started. Good morning, everyone. Super glad to see you. Welcome to the IT Leaders May 2021 event. It's hard to believe it's May already. Makes me a little crazy. Feel like I'm behind the curve. Super glad to have you here. IT Leaders has been operating in Indianapolis for 5 years now. It's difficult to believe, but many of you have been attending since the first few meetings back in 2017, and we're glad to have you. I think it's super cool that we've got a grassroots organization that is committed to making themselves better. So welcome to all of you. So who are we and why are we here? Why do we do this thing every other month? This group is for CIOs and VPs and directors and managers, IT leadership with direct reports. And the group is really founded around 3 pillars or 3 keystones: networking, getting together and chatting, which has been difficult, right? During the pandemic, we used the webinar format for the first few meetings last year, and you poor people had to stare at 3 of us, the 2 speakers and me during the whole time. We flipped back to a meeting format, so we've got more of the Hollywood Squares format, and we need to get together again, and I've got some exciting news about that. The other reasons we get together are mentorship. We have a nice self-service mentor program that many have volunteered for, so if you'd like to be a mentor, if you'd like to look for a mentor, you can contact me directly about that. And primarily and finally, it's really about growing our leadership skills. That's the real reason we're here. So a couple of small details. Please stay muted if you would, and please turn on your video. I know not everybody wants to be looked at, but it's part of the, I think it's part of the group setting, and knowing that there's other people in this with you is important. So if you're willing, please do turn on your video. If you have any problems, you can text me or call me at my number right there on screen. Our July meeting will be virtual again. We'll stick with virtual, but I've got some good news. We're going to do an in-person event in June next month, a one-off event, and then our September meeting will be a hybrid. So it will be in person. We'll allow 24 people into our big room 109. That'll give us enough room to social distance still for those who are concerned about that, but it will be available via video, and we hope to do that live as well. So I'm glad to announce we're getting back together soon. Super cool. Social media, if this group is interesting to you, please take pictures of the screen and please ship those to me or post those on your own LinkedIn. Hashtag is IT Leaders Indy. And if you'd rather just take the pictures and text them to me, you can do that as well. There's a couple of different venues that you can find this, but I want to talk about the LinkedIn company page managed by Rusty Maynard, that handsome man.
Hey there. How you doing?
Pretty good. How about you? Let me mute Matt there. Okay. The LinkedIn company page associated with IT Leaders Indianapolis is called IT Leaders Indianapolis. I know that's clever. And it's a great place to go find information about us. And there's a couple of other places you can find it as well. Most importantly, if you've got other events that you'd like to cross-promote or have us cross-promote for you, please send those to me or to Rusty. Rusty's email is down at the bottom of this page, so snap a shot of this screen if you've got events. I know I work with Sim Indy, which Warren, our speaker today, has been involved in for many years. We cross-promote their events. We cross-promote women in high-tech events. We love the fact that the community is so tight here in Indianapolis. So please help us announce your events by sending that information to Rusty. There is also a LinkedIn private group, also known as IT Leaders Indianapolis, and this is for you to communicate with each other. And it's really a great way to talk about technical questions and answers, which vendors you like, which vendors you don't like so much. If you're looking for a new role, or if you are considering, if you have an opening and are considering a couple of people, it's a great way to communicate with each other. and it is a private group. Rusty and I moderate that, and we don't allow anyone in but practitioners, so IT leaders themselves. So you don't have to worry about the word getting out if you post something there. Here are all the venues, all the web presences that you can stay in touch with IT leaders. Simplest one is itleaders.org/Indianapolis. That gets updated first and foremost. You'll see the update for the July event here in the next couple of days. This is also where you can sign up for the mailing list, so you get a notice. We do a couple of notices per meeting to keep you informed. And then here are the other locations that we just mentioned, the company page, the group, and then Indianapolis IT is the Twitter presence, which Rusty also maintains. If you are interested in the mentorship program, we've got a very simple self-serve mentorship program. We've got a couple of our mentors on the line today. Ray Stanley and Doug Rothman have both expressed interest in being mentors, and there's about a dozen who have expressed interest. If you're interested in that, send me an email and I can get you the information. Doug.Theis@expedient.com. Lou Russell has just started one of the boot camps. Ever since, for 5 years now, we've actually had a sister event that's gone along with the free bi-monthly peer group that you're attending now. The IT Leadership Boot Camp is a Leadership 101 course. Lou Russell, the amazing Lou Russell of Mosier Consulting, has been leading that for all this time. It's about 25 hours of content over 4 sessions, and we did go virtual with that. If you have any questions about that, there is a link at the bottom of the itleaders.org/Indianapolis page. She just started the spring cohort, so there's a chance you may be able to squeeze in if you're in a hurry. If you're in a hurry to be a good leader, or you can contact Lou or me about getting connected in the fall. It's about half of what it's worth, the pricing, $975. And the content is really focused on self-assessments, 360 assessments, a lot of tabletop exercises, and emotional intelligence. So really a great starting place if you're a new leader, or if you've got leaders who lack self-awareness, this is also a good program for them. I know that doesn't happen very often in IT, but if it does with you, if you're the exception, then the boot camp may be really valuable to you. So the next bi-monthly peer group is July 20. And I'm excited to announce that Tracy Barnes, the CIO of IoT, EIEIO, which is the state of Indiana's IT group, that will be our guest CIO speaker. And then Ashley Walters, who is with the Waltline group, who may be in attendance today. I haven't looked down through the list. I know she was signed up for this morning. She'll be our speaker, and she's got some really interesting information on growth. So I look forward to that. The registration for that will be up in the next couple of days. I don't have it up quite yet. It usually takes us a couple of days to get all the details worked out. And it's at the same spot that you register for everything else. Just a reminder, this event happens on the 3rd Tuesday of every other month. So if you want to mark your calendars and put a placeholder in, that's the best time to do that. So it's January, March, May, and so on. We do 6 meetings a year. So this is a time where I feature you all. Many of you have positions or who are looking for positions. Unmute your mic if you've got a position open that you'd like to fill, or if you are looking for your next role. Keep it short, keep it 15 to 30 seconds. Who wants to get started?
You mind if I get started?
Not at all, Warren, go ahead.
So we are looking for a director of quality assurance in IT, obviously. And I'm also looking for a director of IT PMO. So both of those positions will be reporting into me. And we've started our search internally, but we're starting to get out there. I know Jeff posted it for me as well.
Fantastic. Where can they go find that job description, Warren?
If they go up to Byrider, they should find the posting there.
Great, thank you very much. Anyone else who's got a position open?
Hey Doug, it's Tanya. I'm over here at Cox Automotive Dealer Track. I have a Scrum Master position open in Indianapolis. You can go to jobs.coxauto.com.
Thanks. Anybody else?
Hey Doug, it's Calvin. 6 Feet Up is looking for a UX designer and / project manager. They can find that on 6feetup.com/company. Go to the careers page and join our awesome team.
Thanks, Calvin. Can I come over and play your video games after the meeting here? Thank you.
Absolutely.
And anybody else with an open position?
Yeah, this is Adam Arfa. Hey, Doug. And
Hey, Adam.
shout out to Emily. I'm from Elements Financial Federal Credit Union, and we have a Help Desk Tech 2 position open. And we also have a Salesforce Marketing Cloud Analyst job that's open. And you can go out to elements.org and you'll find.
Thanks, Adam. Anybody else with open positions? All right. How about if you're looking? Let's look at the other side of that coin. How about if you're considering your next opportunity? Please go ahead.
So this is Brian Fullwider. I'm looking for kind of an executive-led IT leadership position over infrastructure, cybersecurity, and app dev.
Thanks, Brian. Anyone else?
Hey, Doug, this is Brian. No. Doug, this is Brian Fedgy.
Hi, Brian.
Hey, currently looking for, and I talked to Warren earlier this week already, but IT QA leader, manager, director level, or a senior BA position.
Cool. Sean?
IT director position, look for manager or IT director position.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, we're going to move on. Don't forget to remute yourselves or I'll come around and mute you here again. Finally, a lot of gratitude. Expedient has been underwriting IT leaders for 5 years now. We are a multi-cloud operating model expert. We've been doing data centers for 20 years and cloud infrastructure for 13. And these days, most of the complexity is around operating in multiple clouds. So that's where we help. If you're interested in learning more about Expedient, a company who's willing to support communities and IT leadership, you can look us up at expedient.com. By the way, we've got our Chief Innovation Officer on right now. You'll notice Mike Fulton is on. He's got the Cloud Different background. And I've got a cool announcement about an in-person event we've got coming in June. We are going to do 2 sessions June 8th, so mark your calendars for this. If you're interested in actionable multi-cloud operating models, how do you get this difficult work done, these new complexities? We're going to do a breakfast session in the data center. We've got a limit of 24 people back in our room 109. We've got excellent ventilation, so if you're interested in attending in person, it's going to be a catered breakfast. I think most of you remember how good our catered breakfasts used to be back BC before COVID. So you're welcome to come to that, and we will have a recording. The second, sorry about that. We're also going to do an evening event, and that'll be at a restaurant around town. Same presentation, just an opportunity to fit this into your schedule if you can. So please sign up if you're interested in hearing more about the cloud events. This is not a sales pitch. Please understand. We're doing this because most of the conversations I'm having now are how to deal with complexity of modern clouds. So this is limited to leaders with direct reports. Since the seating is so limited, we want to make sure it's people who can benefit from some of the challenges on multi-cloud. Let's talk about the rest of today's meeting. We've got a cool micro panel of 2 people who are going to be talking about our leadership topics this morning. And we've got Warren Lenard, who is the CIO over at Byrider, who will be speaking after that. Kevin, are you with us this morning? Oh, there you are. I see you now.
Yeah, I'm here.
Great. Kevin, please introduce yourself.
Great. Thanks, Doug. First of all, thanks for having me. My name is Kevin Gearhart. I'm the president of Rehab Medical. We are a medical equipment company based here in Indy. We've got physical locations in about 22 states and growing. We've been growing at about 30% a year for the last 5 years plus, have really no plans on slowing down. And, for us, we're a heavy believer in using technology to help our growth, even though we're in the healthcare space. So, Doug, thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm super glad to have you. Thanks for joining us. Emily, tell us about yourself.
Hi, good morning. So Wolfington is the last name, not Worthington. I saw that on the last side, but so just a quick note, if you look me up on LinkedIn, Wolfington. But I'm an HR professional out of Indy that recently made a big shift from the tech startup and scale up scene, where I spent the last 10 plus years at a few different shops, to a credit union that has been serving Indianapolis since the 1930s. So as you can imagine, it was a pretty radical adjustment, but it really has been amazing for me. So joined the team late last year as the VP of HR and training and development. And I really appreciated, Doug, your shout out about your mentorship component, because that's how I landed this role. Had a long time relationship with their senior VP. So to join her and to have the opportunity to work for someone that believes in you, the way a mentor can, has been pretty remarkable. So yeah, just really looking forward to connecting with this group here to provide encouragement about the value that your groups can offer a business. So looking forward to today's conversation.
Thank you. The topic we're going to talk about today with Emily and with Kevin is really focused on what the business thinks of IT. I think there's been a real acceleration of IT as an enabler over the last year as a side effect of COVID. Never let a good pandemic go to waste, right? I think many of you had great success in helping people move to a work from home model. So I think there's less focus on IT as a cost center and more focus on IT as an enabler. But that's my hallucination. We really want to hear it from the business people on what their expectations are. Kevin, can you talk about what role IT plays in your crazy big growth in your organization?
Yeah, so for us, you talk about being an enabler. That's been a critical component for us. And, we're in the healthcare space, and, for anybody who's in the healthcare space, there's still a lot of faxing and a lot of paperwork and a lot of old technology going on. And so for us, we've really just embraced the need for technology. And what we've done is we've developed essentially our own operating system, but it's a CRM, process flow, document management, e-delivery component, and an app that really allows us to just see everything at the enterprise level very quickly. So as I said earlier, we're in about 22 states. I can tell immediately exactly how many sales I have by sales rep, by market, exactly what's going on. And then I can also see, where do I have bottlenecks? And so for us, what it's done is it's enabled us to have just instant visibility. And what that allows us to do is just move faster. And a lot of our competition is not where we are, and they're not as invested as we are in the technology component. But it's just allowed us to move faster. For us, healthcare, is about speed and communication and getting equipment to patients faster at a better level of communication. And we've just embraced the technology aspect that's allowed us to do that. And it's just allowed us to grow rapidly. And I think that, for us, honestly, the sky's the limit. And even though we're a healthcare company, we also consider ourselves a tech company, just because we're so invested in redeveloping and deploying the technology in-house that's allowed us to take care of the patients and improve lives, which is our mission. So for us, it's been critical. It was a heavy investment. It continues to be a heavy investment, but I look at it as an investment and not an expense. And that's how our company has focused on it. And it's made a tremendous impact for us.
Thanks, Kevin. That's great insight. And it sure seems like with the growth that you've got 30% year over year, that technology is a critical component of keeping your growth alive. Emily, tell us about how IT impacts Elements Financial. And please be honest, even though your CIO is on the call right now as well.
Yeah, I guess I should have ran this by Adam before I spoke to it. But yeah, I think it's very similar to what Kevin described. So, I think about the incredible impact that technology, IT has in general for us. One of our core strategies, credit union, is digital transformation. So as you can imagine, that can take a lot of forms for us. That can be the digital transformation with our employees, that's serving our members. It's just a crucial component of what we need to do. And like Kevin said, we do view that as an investment and not an expense. I think that phrase really popped out at me because it's true for many organizations, but especially at Elements. So you touched on this earlier too, but our IT team specifically inside of our organization has allowed us to keep the lights on. As you can imagine, branches, right? A credit union, how we reach our members radically changed during the pandemic. And if it weren't for just a very quick, step up to the plate, if you will, by our IT team specifically, we wouldn't have been successful in doing it. So the partnership we have with our IT team at the HR level, our senior staff level is just crucial for our success.
Thanks, Emily. Kevin, can you talk a little bit about your IT team and how it's grown and changed over the years?
Yeah, I think, pre-app dev, we were just a typical, IT support desk, right? We had a couple of guys and it was always viewed as like, if something breaks, call them and they'll fix it. We outsourced it for a while. And really when we decided to make a heavy investment in our own core team, we now have, a team of about 4 support desk personnel. We have 4 full-time developers. We have a CTO that thanks to Doug, that's how we found this great find. But our CTO drives all this. We also roll up all of our marketing, all of our digital marketing underneath our IT and technology team, just because it's so integrated. And we've got about 3, soon to be 5 people on that team as well. So the team keeps growing. And again, for us, we're really heavy on just, return on investment, and it's everywhere in the organization. We focus that way. And on the IT side, it's the same thing as, even digital marketing, everything's obviously return on investment. Every time we invest in new technology, it's how are we going to pay for this? And that's just been our mindset and our approach, but we've continued to invest in the IT team in a lot of different ways, just because we're seeing a return.
Emily, tell me about the IT team and how they're having an impact, please.
Yeah, so IT for Elements is just under 20. So when you think about what that looks like, we're just under 200 employees. So we have a significant amount of resources dedicated to our IT function. And that includes everything from the help desk to business intelligence, analysts, project management, and development. So kind of looking at that breakdown, so we've got about 7 developers. We've got 3 hiring for a 4th in our IT team, and the same as Adam shared, that Salesforce opportunity for us in the development space. Then we've got about 4 in our business intelligence area, and two resources for project management, specifically helping with that core strategy, as I mentioned earlier, of digital transformation. So it's significant. I feel redundant in what Kevin said, but it's making a difference. It's that return on investment. They're here to help us be successful.
We're seeing across all companies a growth in application development internally. I know both of you are involved in it. Sometimes it's nothing more than report writing against existing systems, but we're seeing a trend of a lot more interoperability applications and just a lot more fill in the gaps applications where there's a miss. Kevin, AppDev is fairly new to you, and you kind of had a direction change on that. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I think, I don't know, for us, I think as we look at the app dev side, a lot of, and I don't know if this is what you're asking, but I'm going to go here anyway. For us, we originally developed a platform that we were going to market commercially out into the healthcare space. And so it was something that we knew was going to be a good tool, and we knew there was a need for it. And as we were developing it more and more, we finally got to a point where we realized that we could actually grow our business a lot more if we just brought it in-house. So we were literally, we had a ton of investors. We were ready to launch. We had everything ready to go. Platform was ready. At least, minimum viable product was ready. And then we just took a pause and said, you know what, we know healthcare a lot better than we know, software. And so we're going to instead just bring it in-house, grow the company using this. And what it allowed us to do is just modify the technology to be a lot more specific to our businesses. We've got, 3 different healthcare businesses that we run. They all run on the same platform, and just the ability to customize it has been a huge game changer for us. And, rather than, and this is, something that our CTO says is, a lot of technology platforms, they want you to bend your business around their technology. And what we've done is the opposite, right? We bend our technology around our business needs. And that has been a tremendous reason for our growth, just because as we need something, we meet with our CTO weekly and we talk about what's next, what's on the roadmap, and hey, we've got a problem, and hey, here's the problem, here's the business problem. And then our CTO is talking about, well, here's some potential solutions that we could come up with to solve it. And obviously we're collaborating very closely on that, but that's been one change that we made, there was really a shift. It was a major shift, and I'm so glad we did it. We almost launched a new business, and I think it would have been fine, but boy, I'm glad we didn't take that leap.
That's a big change, taking something that far down the road and deciding to shelve it. It's a huge decision, and not everybody can make that decision. That sunk cost fallacy influences us so much. So kudos to you for helping your own business rather than helping the software world. Emily, what problems have you seen with IT and the business communicating with each other, trying to work together? And, what suggestions would you make for them to do better work together?
Yeah, great question. When I think about what's been described here today, thinking about the business need and what you're trying to accomplish, I think a breakdown in communication can be often that, our IT team gets so excited about something, or whether it's a creation or something that an update that's pushed live, right? We have a tendency to just say, oh, it's here, right? And so I think that communication, that trickle down of information can really help strengthen the relationship with the IT groups and the rest of the organization, your members, whatever it is. So really taking the time to educate what not only the new offering is, but how you can use it, how it benefits you, what efficiency it creates. So really, buddying up with a group like, HR, even training and development, to say like, hey, I recognize I am not the best at training someone else on how to do this. So I want to buddy up with you to figure out how do we help just take that steep learning curve to get people going on the new platform, the new product, whatever it is. So really thinking through, who are you involving in the launch of a product, a platform, whatever it is, to get it in the hands faster and enable your users sooner.
Great point. One of the local CIOs, Jay Stanley, laughs often about and talks often about it's not complete, right? The job's not finished till the paperwork's done. I mean, that training, that connecting with the users and making sure that the technology stays aligned with the business is so critical. And it's easy for IT to leave that part out if they're not focused on it.
Yeah. And, ultimately creating that feedback loop, I'm sure that, again, we think that paperwork, once it's submitted and it's done, right? But checking back in, how are things going? Being a part of just conversations that are using the product or whatever it is to just ensure that there hasn't been a directional change, or there hasn't been, how it was used is no longer relevant. I think that you can't just, it's all done, right? You have to continually engage with that, with those user groups, the product, et cetera, to ensure that the value is still being generated.
Kevin, Emily and I are laying all the blame at the feet of the IT team. When we were talking about this meeting, you mentioned that the business can be part of the problem too. Yeah,
it can be. And I think this is where, at least for us, and I speak from our experiences, our IT team, they want to help and they want to help people and they want to solve problems. And I think that, there are times when we have a lot of business people that'll run to IT or run to our tech department, app dev, and say, hey, I need this, I want this. And if we don't put up guardrails for our technology team, they just start running, right? Let me go create this. Great, I can solve that problem, right? There's a million tools out there that people can utilize to solve problems. But if technology team is not aligned with the needs of the business and truly, the business leadership saying, hey, this is what we want to do, it just gets a little disjointed. And then people get frustrated because the people that are asking for things, they're like, well, why aren't you solving my problems? We talked about this and I can't because they said I can't. So, for us, what we found is having a good, clear structure in place, good, clear communication, good roadmap planning. It just allows us to make sure that the technology team stays focused on the priorities of the business at the necessary level, but also allows them to bring challenges to us so we can review them, right? Because I might say, well, hey, here's my top 3 things, we got to get them done. And then our IT team, because they're talking to the field and spending time with the people who see the real problems going day to day, they come say, hey, we got a real problem here. Oh, okay, let's reprioritize. So, for us, I think there's a lot of challenges, but most of them, just like anything, get resolved with just good structure, good communication, good processing, and just a clear understanding of what we're all trying to accomplish. Me trying to understand what the technology team is trying to accomplish, technology team trying to understand what I want to accomplish from a business standpoint. So, for us, that's where we've seen the problems, but that's also what we've done to address those problems. Just clear structure, clear communication, and then having a regular cadence of that communication so that it's not, well, we talked, 3 months ago and I didn't realize you guys were doing all this stuff. No. We have a weekly meeting, and even if it's short, it's what's the priority, what challenges are you seeing, what do you need from me, what do you need from the company? So that's really helped us as we've just spread out so much over the last several years.
Thanks, Kevin. Emily, you made the switch from a local software startup to more of a traditional organization. Is IT different in those two types of organizations?
Yeah, I would say, fundamentally it's the same, as Kevin just shared. IT is seen as the fixers, the problem solvers, which has been amazing to just make sure that consistency is there. I would say a big switch is around budget, right? So the scale up in the startup scene, it's a shoestring budget. And so coming to an organization where there's a specific strategy to support internally your people as well as external, I would say is the biggest difference. Just that, startup and scale up, it's all about your customer externally on who's going to create money. For me in the switch that I've observed now, it's more along how does our IT team help enable our team to serve their members. So it's been really nice. Budget and service in my eyes has been a little bit different.
Thanks. Kevin, you had a leadership change a few years ago to your current CTO. How critical of a component is the IT leader in the success of the group?
For us, I cannot even, it's astronomical, and I think that's where, and I know, Kenny Hicks, who's our CTO, you can make that connection. For us, I think having a technology leader who understands not just the business, but also just the personalities of the leadership and what we're trying to do, the culture we're trying to cultivate and create. I think just having someone who understands, hey, I can provide solutions from a tech standpoint, but I understand, what type of business is this? What type of funding do we have? Where is my money coming from? Am I trying to cut savings? Am I trying to come up with new solutions? Am I trying to generate new revenue? And just really understanding all of that at scope and scale has been just, a tremendous find for us in terms of our ability to launch forward.
Emily, is your team growing or changing, or are you at a steady state right now in IT? How's HR interacting with IT right now?
Yeah, so as we shared, we do have 2 opportunities. So we are growing, and Adam actually presented to our board just a couple weeks ago about how digital transformation is going to continue at Elements. So, I think that like many of our current spaces, if we're not keeping up with the needs of our customers, our members, however you define them, you're lost. So yes, growth for us is crucial and will continue to be an important just IT in general will be an important component of our future strategy.
Kevin, are you prioritizing projects based on impact? I mean, if Kenny's got 20 projects in line, how do you decide which one's number one?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's probably a linear set, but it's, obviously for us, we've got a little bit of, security risk, right? I mean, obviously access, some of those things are critical. And so we kind of put it into different buckets and have a priority set for each of those. I mean, one is security, one is just efficiency, right? What things can we tweak to make people just get a little bit more out of what they're doing? And then the third subset is really just, okay, what's next? What are some major development tools that we can provide or create that's going to allow us to either, change the way we do business, make, just massive sweeping changes. And obviously those are going to take longer from a development standpoint. So we try and keep things into those three buckets for the most part, and just figure out where that looks.
Emily, your world changed pretty dramatically as a side effect of COVID. Are some of those changes going to stick?
Oh yeah, I think as an HR leader, and as an HR team, we've had the opportunity to really sit back and think about what has it done for our culture, what has it done for our members, et cetera. So we are taking the time to ensure that we've really evaluated what have we learned from the pandemic positively and negatively, and what do we want to continue forward and not. So, I think it was a really healthy exercise, not only for our senior staff to have, but all at the department level as well. Just really thinking through what is it that I want to, what do I want to keep going forward? So, I've seen a couple people in masks today, and some it looks like they're in the office, some are at home. So, there has to be intentionality on making that decision on what you've learned and versus when you're back to normal, right? Like, do we just go back to the old way of thinking or doing? So, really putting in a concerted effort to identify what are those things that you want to keep, talking with your team about it. And then, like I said, just making the effort to make it a part of your fabric going forward.
Is training playing is it changing as a side effect of COVID?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, great call out. So training for us has really traditionally just been, hey, here's this, right? And just kind of throwing it out there, or in-person events only. And now it's provided us an opportunity to really stand back and think about what tools are we using to deliver this? What are we thinking about learning styles? And COVID really has afforded us that opportunity to stand back and think about, how do we launch things? How do we make sure that we've thought through who's receiving it and how it's received? So, it could be a recording now as opposed to watching it virtually live. It could be consumed now, it can be consumed later. So yeah, training has really evolved to fit the needs of not only, who's receiving it, but who's delivering it. So yeah, a lot has changed with training and development. We focused on launching a new learning management system in partnership with our IT team, ensuring that all our systems talk, that it's easy to use, and all areas of our business can take advantage of it. So yes, training has definitely seen a new look coming through the pandemic for the good.
Kevin, we've got 48 people or so in the Hollywood Squares here, and almost all of them are IT leadership. Any recommendations you've got for them on doing better work for their business teams?
The only thing I would say is just, make sure there's a clear understanding of the business and the business needs, and just making sure there's a clear understanding of communication style. I think that's probably what's been the most effective for us, is just making sure we know how we're communicating with each other, making sure that, sometimes people speak different languages. And so I think it's helpful to understand, what someone means, what they're looking for, what they're I mean, I think Emily used the word intentionality. I think that is just such a key word in terms of how we do business, and making sure we're intentional with what we're trying to accomplish. And I think as long as there's an understanding of that, I think, and just creating a relationship. I mean, I can tell you, I have a great relationship with our CTO. I have a great relationship with our technology team. That has helped me tremendously in my day-to-day work. And I know that it's helped, on the technology side of just having a good relationship with me and good communication, understanding and style. So that's the only thing I would recommend, and obviously my personal opinion. So, doesn't mean anything, but that's what's worked for us.
No, that's great. Thank you. Emily, any additional thoughts on that, on what IT people can do to do better work for their companies?
I mean, Kevin said it nicely. What I would add is just be human, right? I think a lot of times we can just get in our to-do list and we can think, oh my gosh, I've got to get this done. We've got to get this done. And I think it's important to check in with your people. I think it's important to take time for yourself to decompress and celebrate those small wins before you just jump into the next thing. So do better work by being nice to one another, acknowledge when you've had a success, and then just get to it. So there's a lot to be done all the time. And it's nice to feel appreciated and celebrate others, as well as take time to celebrate yourself.
Great point. I asked a couple of other business leaders in preparation for this session what messages they might be interested in sharing. One of the ones that stood out the most was don't use jargon in communications. If you're talking in terms of IT, a lot of people in the room or on the business side have no idea what you're saying. So learn how to translate IT into business. And if you want to get even more focused on that, understand who it is that you're talking to. If you're talking to the C-suite, the CEO may be more concerned with market share, where the CFO may be more concerned with costs and risks associated. So there's a number of different books on that topic. And, I've learned over the years to speak CFO. It is not easy, and it's not easy to get out of your own head. I mean, most of us have been promoted from stellar individual contributors to some level of incompetence as a leader. And, a lot of the skills that you have to learn to be that leader are about communicating appropriately, as both Kevin and Emily said. The other thing that a couple of people mentioned that I think is worth mentioning is understand the emotional side of projects that you're working on along with the rational side. So a sea change in an ERP system or a critical line of business application, something that your end users have to live and die by, can be a heavy emotional experience for a lot of your end users. Some people are more change averse than others. So don't forget to address that. Don't forget to address the emotional and the rational sides of change that you're implementing. And also, many IT people are trained around pain. What's the problem? What do we need to solve here? Don't forget about aspirational wishes. Just because there's no pain doesn't mean there's no work to be done. If you had a magic wand, is the old saying, if you had a magic wand and could make this system do something, what would it be? Or what capabilities would you like IT to add? Those aspirational questions we often miss as business analysts and critical thinkers. We tend to want to solve problems rather than be open and listening to see change in the environment. We've got a couple of minutes left here. Any questions for Emily or for Kevin before we get started? Just unmute yourself and speak up if you do. Wow, that's excellent. It sounds like you two answered all the questions. Everybody's problems are solved now.
I just like the fact that Emily mentioned being human. I think that was great. So.
Yeah, it's a good point. Anyone else? Last chance for questions. Great. Kevin, Emily, appreciate your willingness to contribute to the IT community, even though you're not centered in that world. It's a big deal, and I think we need to keep our focus. Alignment's been an issue ever since IT showed up in the business, so it's a key component. Thanks, Kevin.
Thanks, Doug. Appreciate you having me.
Emily, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Warren Lenard is the former president of SIM here in Indianapolis. He's our guest CIO speaker today. Warren, you are a co-host, so you can present if you choose to. Warren's going to tell us a little bit about his journey and some of the successes and failures he's had along the way. Warren, take it away.
Okay. Just a check here. Everybody can see my screen okay? All right. Doug, first of all, thank you for having me. I know we've talked about this for a while. I also thank the group. I know many people on the Hollywood Squares here that I've worked with. I know through SIM, through other organizations. So thank you for having me. My goal today is really share my story, share my journey. I do consider it a leadership journey versus calling it an IT journey. You can look at yourself, everyone on here is a leader in some shape or form, and you can choose to look at yourself as an IT person who happens to lead, or you can look at yourself as a leader who happens to be in the IT space. And I choose the latter. Leadership has been something since the beginning of my career I kind of latched onto, and I'll talk about that. I'll take you through the chronology of my career, and again, 4 decades, and I guess technically speaking, I'm into my 5th, but I don't like to talk about that too much. And so, let's get started. Before that, just a little bit about me. Born and raised in New York. In fact, I was born in the Bronx, home of the Yankees. No offense to any Boston Red Sox fans out there. And spent the first 9 years of my life growing up in the Bronx, New York. We moved up eventually to Westchester County, where I kind of did the rest of my elementary school and into my high school years. I attended Roosevelt High School in Yonkers, New York, and excelled in mathematics, was captain of the baseball team. So I kind of played both roles, and I was in a lot of different groups, which was interesting for me growing up. I just wasn't in one group. I was kind of in a mix of groups, which I think was good training for me going forward and be able to relate to different types of people. Way back then, as you can see from the dates, we didn't really have exposure to computers and things like that in high school, but computer science was a rising field, and in discussions with guidance counselors, it was determined, hey, why don't you pursue computer science? And so I moved on and went to Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute for the first couple of years of my college career. I finished up at Stony Brook University and eventually graduated with a Bachelor of Science, Computer Science and Applied Mathematics. And from there, I was launched into the wild, wild world of the business world, where I would spend the next 30 years working in Manhattan at various different organizations. And I'll take you through that now. And I thought it might be, as we know, we're going through a very interesting time today, with the pandemic and equity and all sorts of things that are going on in this world. In fact, I was talking to my son and I was like, I don't remember a time in my life when there have been so many different things that are out there that are influencing our worlds as much as it is today. So, but, in each decade, there's always been things going on. So, as I started my career, I started off in the 80s. And again, a lot going on in the world, a lot of things that were happening. The very first company I worked for was a company called Associated Dry Goods. They were a retail firm that owned companies like Lord & Taylor, Caldors, LS Airs, which I believe was here. And, I actually got that job. I came into the computer world at a very interesting time. It was the cross section of mainframe computing, and the IBM PC had just been launched. And it was a very interesting time going from green screen computing to now this new world of the PC. My first job at ADG was gotten through one of my college buddies' fathers, and came in and I actually did not work in what was called then the MIS department. It wasn't called IT back then, it was called MIS. And I actually worked in the International Operations Department as the liaison there and started building PC-based applications. In fact, in many respects, I was the nemesis from the for the MIS department, because where they would take 2 weeks to deliver things, I was building all these PC-based applications. And it was quite an interesting time for me. I was learning technology. I was also managing a data entry group. So I was starting to dip my toes in the water in leadership and supervision and working with people. And I would spend 3.5 years at ADG until they were absorbed by another company called the May Company, which I spent a little bit of time with, but wasn't really happy there culturally and moved on and found myself in the world of the legal industry. Went to work for one of New York City's largest law firms, Simpson, Thacher and Bartlett. Actually met up with another college buddy of mine and took a job there. And that was an interesting space for me because I went from, had been in somewhat of a leadership role at ADG, and now I was in an individual contributor role. And I spent a few years at Simpson, Thacher and Bartlett doing lots of different things. I was building applications, I was training senior partners on software, but it was largely a individual contributor role, and I found myself missing the leadership component of it. And this is where it started to dawn on me, the things that I really wanted to do. I loved technology, but at the same time, I yearned for the leadership role. And as I moved around, I looked for opportunities, and as we enter into the 90s now, I found myself getting into the world of entertainment and media. And I went to go work for a company that many of you will obviously know, Showtime. And this is where my leadership career really took off, as far as not only in success, but also in the things that, understanding the things I wanted to do. I worked for a CIO at Showtime. It was my first real female boss, and I loved working for her. She was a tremendous leader. What was interesting, though, in all the divisions of Viacom, Showtime was one of those. She didn't have a lot of respect from the other CIOs within those other organizations, MTV, Viacom Corporate, and it was because she wasn't techie. She was really about leadership. And I admired that. The lessons that she would teach me, I would carry for the rest of my career. The technology would come, she said. What was really important to her was how I led, how I communicated, how I dealt with people, how I handled myself with the executive teams. And those were things that were really on her mind and the things that she taught me. And that to me was, again, a life lesson that was just invaluable. Spent quite a while at Showtime. It's also the place where I went through my first leadership training, where they brought an outside firm in to actually monitor us. They would actually shadow us in our offices and conference rooms, and really kind of take us through a lot of different trainings around leadership. We were filmed doing presentations, which, as most of you, if anybody's been through that, you know how ugly that can be. But you learn how valuable presentation is, and I'll get into that a little bit later. From Showtime, I was tapped on the shoulder to go to Viacom, which is the parent company, and lead a group of senior engineers that were really responsible for the entire Viacom network. And you know, this was a group that I had to win over. Here I was, a divisional IT person coming in and taking over their group. And this was a testament of being able to come in and actually lead and show that leadership itself was a thing. And eventually had great success at Viacom in leading that organization. But then, you know, times changed and I was passed up for an opportunity, believe it or not, at Viacom. And it was a director role that I had wanted. I got passed up for it. Of course, putting in your 2-week notice on the last day that I was actually at Viacom ready to leave, the head of that area came into my office and said he was going to offer me the job. I was like, you're way too late. You're way too late. I'm moving on. And I moved on to New Line Cinema. And this would probably be one of the most pivotal points in my career. I'd go on to spend 10 years at New Line Cinema. New Line was an interesting place to work. We were the golden child at that time for Time Warner in doing films like The Lord of the Rings. And this is where I would truly cut my teeth. I went in as a director. I would eventually finish up as a senior vice president. But this is also where I would make some tragic mistakes and pitfalls in not managing my career. There was a point where I just felt things were going to be automatic, where I would just continue to go down my trajectory and eventually I'd be the CIO, because at this point in my career, my sights were on becoming a CIO. I had decided leadership was truly what I wanted to do, and the CIO role was where I wanted to be. All roads seemed to be pointing in that direction. And as I went into, crossed over to the 21st century, and we all went through the number of things that were going on back then, including the infamous Y2K. And as I continued through New Line Cinema, again, the road was moving down. I felt like all things being equal, I would become CIO. And then lo and behold, we had the rug pulled out from underneath us as Time Warner decided to dissolve New Line Cinema as an organization and rolled it into Warner Brothers. This was a huge wake-up call for me because I had truly been asleep at the wheel. And what I mean by that is I had not been cultivating my network. All of you today being here have already taken those steps, right? You know the value of networking, but it's really more than networking, right? And you learn valuable lessons in it. You learn that, for instance, when is the best time to network? And you quickly realize in these horrible moments when you haven't been doing it, that it was probably 2 years ago. And the problem with that, when you have not been cultivating your network, when you haven't been building relationships, when you're doing so at a time when you need a network, you kind of look desperate. You look like you have your hand out, and you can't help but look like that. And it's not a good time for anybody to go through, but it's a learning experience. And I think we could all attest to the fact that we have successes and we have failures in our careers or pitfalls or challenges. And it's those times when you really, really learn from those mistakes. And so at that point, I realized the mistake I had made, and I was going to correct it. And that is exactly when I discovered SIM. So I became a member of the Society for Information Management. I became a member of both chapters, the New York City chapter, as well as the Fairfield Westchester chapter. And I never really looked back. Building my network and cultivating that network became part and parcel to everything that I needed to do. I knew that I needed to do that. And it was more than just building a network, right? And it's one thing to make LinkedIn connections and build your network. It's another thing to cultivate relationships. And when I talk about relationships, I'm talking about authentic relationships, a relationship where both parties are benefiting, where you begin a relationship by giving before you receive. And as you cultivate relationships like that, when times come in your career that you need your network, you need your relationships, they will be there automatically for you. You won't have to hunt those things down. And that's the importance of doing that. And again, like I said, I never looked back, and this became a process for me that I would carry to this day. And so I did rebound and found myself back in entertainment and media, working for Lifetime Networks. And Lifetime was a great place to work. Loved being down there. In fact, we worked in a building that eventually Google bought, which is one of the largest building actually in Manhattan, outside of the post office. But unfortunately, Lifetime Networks, within 5 months of me working at Lifetime, they were acquired by A&E. And all of the Lifetime senior people were put to the street. And I found myself once again in transition. This was an interesting time because I was also now headed into the next decade and made a significant turn in my career. I had spent the last almost 20 years in entertainment and media, and now pivoted out and worked for a company, actually LFUSA, which is a division of Li and Fung. This was an organization that owned wholesale retailers and apparel. Interesting culture, different culture, and a culture I came to find that I really didn't like. It was largely made up of mergers and acquisitions, and the culture of the organization was to gobble up companies, and there didn't seem to be a whole lot of care around people. And this struck me and was not something that I was really fond of, but I was gaining great technical experience in the things that we were doing. I probably led the largest data center migration in my career that I had done. And so it was great experience, but again, culturally, it was not something that I was really enjoying. turns out about a couple of years into working in that role, Lee and Fung and LFUSA decided to move all of IT and lots of other back office operations out of Manhattan and down to Greensboro, North Carolina. Folks were given the choice to actually make the move or not. And I chose not to make the move. It was not something my family and I wanted to do at the time. And so I chose to take a package and leave. But then I stayed I went actually into full-blown retail, and I worked for the Children's Place. And actually, the Children's Place was my first job then outside of Manhattan. I was working in New Jersey. And this was an interesting organization. Again, I was gaining great experience in the things that I was doing. But this was a place that I would find that there was a lot of antagonistic behavior around my peers. We worked for, quite frankly, a chief executive officer who did not embrace IT as a partner, but more so as a cost center, something exactly the opposite of what Emily had mentioned earlier. And this was apparent, and it just didn't drive good culture. I wound up working for 3 different CIOs at the Children's Place because of this, and not my favorite place to work. Upon the entrance of the 4th CIO, there was a major changing of the guard, and I found myself in transition once again. And here is where I had a major decision to make. I had gained great experience both as an IT professional and as a leader, but what was going to be my next opportunity? And a lot of recruiters were coming to me and speaking to me about the fact that there was a lot of organizations outside of New York who were looking for New York type talent. And this was a long conversation between my wife and I about whether or not I would cast a wide net or a narrow net. And we decided to cast a wide net. And after exploring a number of different opportunities outside of New York, this is actually what brought us to Indy. And so I went to work for Finish Line. And Finish Line is as many of you know, a sports apparel organization that is headquartered here in Indianapolis, and still to this day, one of the most favorite places I've ever had to work. Great leadership. My exposure to different types of people, different leaders was tremendous, and they continued to foster my career as an IT leader. Spent about 4.5 years at Finish Line, and it was really a rewarding experience for me. But at the end of the day, my sights were really set on becoming a CIO. At this point, I was president of SIM, as Doug had mentioned earlier, of the Indianapolis chapter. So earlier on, when I had moved my SIM membership to Indy upon moving here, I eventually became the vice president of membership, then became the president-elect, and then became the president of the chapter. I went on to being president of SIM for the next 3 years, which was kind of unprecedented because we were changing the bylaws and the terms of the roles. And I was happy to do so. And it was through my presidency that a recruiter reached out to me, not actually seeking me, but seeking if I knew anyone who'd be interested in a CIO role in Carmel, Indiana. And I said, well, so happened I may know somebody. And that somebody was me, and pursued the role. And through that capability and through that connection, I landed here at Byrider. And, this was the pinnacle for my career. I'd finally made it to the CIO role. And this is where I wanted to be, and started to cultivate this organization and run my own shop. And it's been a lessons learned ever since. And, so when I reflect back on this entire career, that spanned, 4 decades, and now ultimately landing here at the role that I had pursued and being here at Byrider, a number of things come to mind. First of all, as I talked about how you envisioned yourself, that leadership does stand on its own. There are leaders, and there are folks that potentially maybe not cut out for leadership. These are the things as leaders we need to be able to recognize within our organization. There could be people, diamonds in the rough within our own organizations that could be potential leaders, but don't even know it themselves. And our role really is to kind of model leadership, model it and cultivate it within our organizations, because leadership in of itself is a skill. It's things that we need to bring to the table. It's not just the best engineer. It's not just the best developer that would be suitable then to be the director or the manager or the vice president of engineering. It's really the person who is really has the qualities of a leader. And so that's the thing that all of us here need to cultivate and be cognizant of. It was mentioned earlier about communication. Doug talked about it. It is one of the things that I hold very high in high regard. It's really the difference between words and how you tell a story. I tell my people all the time, I believe Susan's on the line today, and she knows that I talk about this probably daily. How we communicate, how we present, how we tell our stories, how we get a message across is so important. Understanding who your audience is. As Doug pointed out, don't talk in acronyms. Don't talk in IT language if you're speaking to the business. Answer the questions that are going to be on people's minds when you're going to be messaging, when you're going to be telling a story. Because again, it's not just about what you're saying, it's how you're saying it. That's truly important. And I can't stress this enough about setting the bar so high for communication. Another thing is about empowerment. There is a line in the sand that you need to draw as leaders of how far down do you reach and how far do you empower your own groups. I would argue that staying somewhat distant at times is actually best. Diving down and clearing people out of the way and saying, let me handle it is not the answer. And a lot of times you'll have organizations where your peers are looking for you to have that type of depth within your organization. And I push back on that all the time and say, no, my team can handle this. This is what their job is about. And so the empowerment of your organization is so, so critical. I would argue from now until the end of time that empowered teams can reach much higher than teams that are just being overmanaged or micromanaged for that matter. Here's one that meets a lot of controversy when I discuss it with a lot of other people, but I stand to it. I don't believe anybody should require to be motivated. Influence is one thing, motivation is another. And I would argue that if you're surrounding yourself with the wrong people, those are the folks that you need to motivate. If you're surrounding yourself with the right people, if you have the right people on the bus, you're not having to motivate. What you're doing is you're building, you're coaching, and you're mentoring self-motivated teams. You want to influence, clearly, but you want to surround yourself with folks who are motivated to do their roles, to do their jobs. That's what you're looking for when you're looking to build your teams. And kind of lastly, I'll take you through a quote that I find very powerful. It's actually featured in the book Wonder, but it's by Dr. Wayne W. Dyer. If you have the choice between being right and being kind, choose being kind. And I'd like to just, for the purpose of this meeting and for business, just change that a little bit and remove kind, which is also very powerful, and change that to helpful. I find that too often, too many folks are looking for validation. They want to be right. And we find that in very pointed situations where someone is arguing their point versus actually just trying to help the situation along. It could be an initiative. It could be a big project. It could be a big problem that you're in a war room discussing, trying to solve something. My point is, don't be so concerned about being right. Instead, help the situation along. That to me is way more powerful than being right. And you find it even in subtle situations. I'm sure many of you can attest to either asking for information from somebody or someone else has asked for information. And a lot of times the first words out of someone's mouth is, oh, I sent you that last week. Okay, can I have it? The point is I try and coach folks, avoid that language. There's no point in saying that you sent something last week if they're asking for it. If they're asking for something, they need it. Just provide it. The subtleties in the way we communicate, the subtleties in the way we partner with people is so important in establishing, again, those authentic relationships and moving things along. Because I would argue that as you're working on initiatives and everybody has a piece of the pie, everyone has a role in a particular initiative or project. If one piece is left undone, the project is not completed. And so I'll say to folks a lot of times when we're having discussions, where are we with a particular initiative? And a lot of times you'll get an answer back like, well, I did my part. And it's like, okay, did the next person do their part? Well, that's their job. And the answer is yes, technically that's true. But you could be helpful and you could go over and find out, do they realize you finished your part? Do they need help with their part? There's always anomalies to situations and there's egregious situations that can be dealt with on the side. But what I try and coach and what I try and teach is that helpfulness, moving things along. Take one for the team. Get the project or the initiative or the problem resolved, and don't be so concerned about being right. Partnership is key, and I believe that all of that breeds success, and not being so, kind of taken with being right. And with that, I thank you for inviting me today. And Doug, I guess there'll potentially be some questions.
Yeah, I think so. If you have questions for Warren, please type them in the chat. I've got a couple for you to get started, Warren, if you would, please. First of all, you mentioned SIM being a really key part of your professional career. Can you talk about who SIM is for and some of the benefits or outcomes people might achieve by getting involved in SIM, Indy?
So, first of all, SIM is an organization that is over 50 years old. It spans some 40 chapters across the country and close to 5,000 members. It's an organization that, one of the things that sets SIM apart is the philanthropy that comes along with SIM. We give back to the community tremendously. All the chapters within SIM do. There are large chapters like the Boston chapter that have some 400 members. And then there are chapters such as the Indianapolis chapter, which right now we're in the 40 to 50 range. It's a powerful organization. We give back, again, scholarships. We partner with different organizations. We sponsor things. It's really a tremendous and very valuable organization to the community and to its members. We have been looking to expand our reach as well as we broaden our program. So when I took the presidency, we typically had 4 dinners a year, and that was kind of it. And we've expanded that now. Of course, there's the annual symposium as well that SIM is the host of, and we work with EFM in sponsoring that and putting that show together in every September. But we have our executive forums still. We've now introduced the Indy CIO Roundtable, which is exclusively for CIOs. It's a kind of a close-knit dinner of 6 to 8 CIOs that come together for kind of intimate conversation around various different topics. We're having a golf outing this year as well. And we also do an annual wine dinner. So we've expanded things quite a bit. Powerful organization, again, around senior IT leadership. And one of the things that's really been phenomenal around SIM is that during this pandemic, as a lot of us had jobs to fill, many of us had to fill those roles in remote locations. And one of the things about SIM is because you have a national presence, you're able to reach out to other chapters and to kind of help you fulfill those roles. So that's been a great aspect of SIM that has been beneficial, especially in this last year.
Speaking of reaching outside of the markets, are you seeing competitive pressures by coastal companies hiring Indiana people, or are you reaching farther into other markets to try to find your next best people?
So the answer simply is yes. I can't speak to whether or not I think the shortage at times of people here is because other markets are reaching out to them. I just know that there has been a shortage of talent. We've had to go out to the outside to hire folks. And over the past year, we've hired 3 people who have been, not local to the area. And it's been a challenge. One of the things that I have said all along with this pandemic and work from home is that it is, when you think about it, it has changed our lives significantly. And even as Emily had pointed out earlier, we're not really sure how far back this pendulum is going to swing. Today, we're still about 75% work from home and don't plan to change that. So it does keep people on an even playing field so you can hire from remote. But it'll be interesting to see what happens over the next year and how many people make their way back to the office. And I do plan to bring the remote people in every once in a while so we can get some FaceTime, because I do believe, again, we are humans, and I do believe that we still need that FaceTime together. So we're trying to balance it. I have tried to keep leadership roles local if I can, but where I can't, in fact, I'm looking at a quality assurance engineer today that's remote. So we're not going to put that off anyway. We're not going to put that off if there's great talent to be had in our organization.
Can you talk, is there much of a difference in your experience in managing app dev sides of the house versus infrastructure sides, or PMO versus business analysis? How much granularity do you think about when it comes to leadership in those different disciplines?
I mean, with regard to the people aspect of it, to me, there is no difference. Regardless of your role, there's many similarities in how we need to manage our teams. That said, there's no cookie cutter approach to even managing people, because everyone is different and everyone needs to be influenced in a different way. It needs to be worked with in a different way. There's going to be certain things that will stimulate one person and maybe not the other. I mean, there's definitely characteristics of a developer versus, let's say, a NetOps engineer, no doubt. But I mean, at the end of the day, to me, it is around management. It is around people. It is around leadership. And I try to kind of, manage the organization and influence my leaders to be ubiquitous in the way we go about leading the teams and be inclusive in that regard. So again, different roles require different things. Like when I talk to my service desk folks, this is where I harp on communication a lot. We talk about communication at the service desk very frequently, because they are, in many respects, our eyes and ears to the business community. And if they're communicating out in a language that people can't understand, that's not good. That's not a good day. And there are other roles that don't communicate as much to the outside. So that might be an area where I don't need to focus as much. I mean, we do go over communication for the whole department, but again, different roles require different things. But as people, we pretty much, lead consistently.
There's a question about the challenges of networking during the pandemic. Did you see that affect your, I don't know, everything from your psyche to your ability to do good work in SIM long term? I know you're still involved at a fairly high level, even though you're no longer the president.
No, yeah, I mean, I think for many people, let's face it, some folks were furloughed, some people lost jobs. It was a time where networking, as I had mentioned early in my career, making that mistake, and I saw people. I had people reach out to me that clearly had made that same mistake. You could tell that there was desperation, and it's okay. I took those meetings. I was very much, and I've always been very open to it. I get it that people can make that mistake, and so when someone wants to have coffee or someone has lunch and get together and run things by me, that's something that I do put a lot of time into. What I found with SIM is I always felt that our executive forum dinners were very valuable, and the value to me was really being in front of people in person. In my opinion, you can't mimic that across a video conference. It's not the same thing. You just can't kind of mosey on up to, Doug and say, hey, Doug, what's going on, when we just have a sidebar conversation. It's not that flexible. It's not that fluid. And so during last year, as we had to convert to virtual events, they were better than I thought they would be, but they truly, in my opinion, weren't what they could be. And the other day, we just had our first in-person event, which was the CIO roundtable. And I can tell you, it was just a great event, just being in front of people and having those sidebar conversations, and just talking face to face. So I'm glad we seem to be headed back into that direction.
I couldn't agree more. I certainly value the face-to-face, and I think there's a lot more depth and breadth into the conversations. Warren, I really appreciate you giving us a window into your own life, into your own success journey in leadership. I think that many of you have noticed over the years that it's not all rainbows and unicorns along the way. There's plenty of difficulty, but failure is often what teaches us far better than success. I will be following up with an email with Warren, a link to Warren's presentation, along with notices on the upcoming events. Remember, on the June 8th event, that we're doing those in person. That's really about multi-cloud operating models, and that's reserved for leaders. And this is a discussion, this is an interactive discussion about what challenges you're having, and what really the new complexity is around multi-cloud operating. We have got a lot of interest right now on strategy from, we've stayed away from IT topics and really focused on leadership in this group for many, many years. What I'm seeing right now is a lot of people, as a side effect, again, of the pandemic, are trying to consider what their new strategies look like, because the world has changed so much when it comes to how people show up and how technology gets delivered. So this is the kickoff for more events on strategy for folks who are looking to go deeper in that. Now, remember, these are small events, so and I don't have registration up yet. So if you're interested in this strategy event, contact me via email directly, doug.theis@expedient.com, so I can reserve a spot for you in those upcoming meetings. Breakfast at the data center, and then an evening event or a late afternoon event. We're going to just do appetizers and a discussion, probably in the 3 o'clock time frame on that same June event. So if that's of interest to you, let us know. Let me look at the date here. The July 20th event is going to feature Ashley Walters. Hi, Ashley, how are you? And Tracy Barnes from the state of Indiana. Both have very interesting content. Tracy's background is fascinating. He has been in the political side of the state government for many years, and it really gives him a superpower when it comes to doing IT in many respects, because it's about people, as we all know. We learned that the hard way or the easy way. So I'm excited about that session too. Again, if you've got strategy sessions that you'd like to present, or if you know people who've done presentations, please contact me so we can bring good content to you. It's super important that we keep this group fresh and engaged. If you've got events that you'd like us to cross promote, don't forget to send those to Rusty Maynard so that we can get those on the radar as well. Go ahead and open up your mics. We're getting ready to shut down here for the May event. It is so nice to see every one of you. I wish you good luck here at the end of May in our busy time. Thanks. Everybody say hello to everybody else right now, please. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Hi.
Thanks for having me.
So great to see you.
Thank
Everything was great today.
Thanks, Kevin. Thanks for the feedback, Brett. Have a great day, everyone. Bye now.
You too.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Doug. Great job.
Bye, everyone.